in our state.
Violence in relation to democracy and elections has never been the hallmark of this country.
An ugly incident in the final days of the campaign. Husnia Shams, ABC News, Sydney.
Right-o, that was pretty informative.
There's something
not
about
really, but that's Main Street Media for you, y'all. God, see, my accent's just fucking horrible. Don't even know why I try. Anywho's, let's not go to that quite yet. Point of the show is there's protests everywhere. Remember, this is not just an American, this is not just a Western culture thing. So let's take a look at our, let's run my voice down to nothing while we take a look at our Carnegie propaganda station, but still giving us some information. Carnegie, a bullshit probably at best, but they're still giving us some information. So we got Cameroon. They have a protest from detained youth protests. Ooh, what is that? Let's expand. The military detained about 30 youths for their suspected involvement in a rebel activity. Accusations of abuse committed by Cameroon's military in the region. The key participants are women, I guess, fighting for their kids. And the military released, the outcome is the military has released the youths. And over 100 people, about 100 people a week ago in Cameroon. China has retiree protests. Colombia, social and economical reform protests, about 1,000 people there. Denmark, 40,000 people. A public holiday cancellation protest. Damn, Denmark's getting out for a cancellation of a holiday. We can't get Americans out like that for freaking them taking away our rights, but oh, that's fantastic. Ethiopian water shortage protest. Now that's something serious. Anger over perceived government inaction to provide sufficient water. No policy leadership change in response to the protest yet in Ethiopia. France. France has more than 2,000 people protesting right now. An anti-pesticide ban. Okay, Carnegie, you need to get your shit together, or maybe that's going to be down here further. Here we go. 1.2 million government Yeah, see, this is still going. It's been going on for a month, and we're going to be doing a lot of clips from that. But yeah, look at all these. 13,000 people for peace in Ukraine and Germany. 15,000 people in Germany for mine expansion, 100,000 people in Israel. That's something we're going into, definitely. Portugal teacher wage protests. Bangladesh had economic protests. All things that are happening. All things are going on. This is even from a Main Street Media site. Even this is from a billionaire resource site. They even have to admit that there is over 400 significant anti-government protests have erupted worldwide over the last few years. More than 132 countries have experienced significant protests. 23% of significant protests have lasted more than 3 months. 135 significant economic anti-government protests have occurred since 2017. Fun facts here, guys. Fun facts. All right, let's get back to clips so I can save my sore throat ass voice. Here we go. How Iran's history is fueling the Mahajan Mahini protests. It's complicated. From The Guardian. I am not subscribing to this. This might be some propaganda. Always know walking into it if it's propaganda or not. It helps. Just keep your head up. Make sure if you know you might be walking into some propaganda.
November 2022, news broke that Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish woman, died in custody following her arrest by the Gosht Irshad, Iran's morality police, for improperly wearing her hijab. The news of her death sparked protests in Tehran, which quickly spread to towns and cities across Iran, becoming the country's longest major protests against the ruling Islamic Republic. While Iran is no stranger to protests, the current demonstrations are unique, not only because they are about the rights of women, but that they're being led by them too. So why are the Iranian protests being driven by women? When viewing the continuing protests in Iran, it's important to consider the wider historical and geographical context that they are a part of. Iran is home to one of the oldest civilizations in the world, one that has a rich history of traditions and religions, where women were not only highly respected, but in some cases considered equals of men. It's hard not to see that historical and geographical influence in some of the powerfully symbolic ways women are protesting now. The haircutting gesture, adopted by protesters, activists, celebrities, and politicians, has its origins in Persian literature. The epic poem Shahnameh, that tells the story of the Persian Empire from the creation of the world until the Muslim conquest, refers to Farangis cutting her hair and binding it to her waist to protest and mourn her husband's death. The Kurdish slogan adopted by protesters, Jin Jan Azadi, meaning woman, life, freedom, also has particular regional significance. Mahsa Amini was one of an estimated 10 million Kurds living in Iran. Mahsa's Kurdish name is Gina, but Kurdish names are deemed unacceptable in Iran on the grounds that they are considered foreign and un-Islamic. The slogan has spread globally and can be heard at protests around the world in a show of solidarity for the movement in Iran. The early 20th century was a tumultuous time in Iranian history. But the years following World War II saw a period of relative stability that ushered in many social and economic reforms. Among them were many gains for the rights of women. The right to vote came in 1963, and the family protection law granted women equal rights in marriage and divorce, enhanced women's rights in child custody, and increased the minimum age of marriage. There was also a greater access to education. In 1966, just over 17% of the Iranian female population were literate. This rose to 35.5% by 1976. Women also entered public office for the first time. But in 1979, the Islamic Revolution marked a significant change in direction for Iran, and many of the rights of women were rolled back. On March 8, 1979, a month after Ayatollah Khomeini's rise to power, a march to celebrate International Women's Day transformed into a massive protest against new enforced modesty rules for women. But despite the demonstrations lasting for 6 days, by 1983, wearing of the hijab was made compulsory. Even today, as Iranian authorities continue to restrict the rights of Iranian women, it's hard not to see the legacy of the gains that were made during the mid-20th century. Iranian women are now more educated than ever and are demanding greater opportunities to shape their lives. Literacy rates among young women between 15 to 24 have soared to 99% in 2021, and as of 2019, women made up 58% of university enrollments. As a result, this generation of young, highly educated women and girls are protesting rules that limit their freedom of movement, right to bodily autonomy, and access to enter the labour force. And despite the Iranian government's crackdown, that has seen many women and girls being killed, beaten, and incarcerated, the protest movement continues.
All right, another fantastic example of not needing to agree with a news station, news source most of the time, knowing that The Guardian produces a lot of garbage bullshit. They left out some pretty significant facts in my opinion, but they did give us most good facts. So, you know, that's one of those situations. Like, they don't talk about how 1979 uprising was a lot to do with the CIA funding the wrong terrorists. They don't go into the fact that yes, Iran was moving the most progressive country in that region until we tried to destabilize it. The Western powers, but skipping some of those things helps keep their narrative. The Guardian can give us a good story without digging deeper into some of the worst problems of that scenario. Okay, now, yep, 30 seconds of talking, my throat starts to hurt. So, but yeah, that was a good clip. So we gave them the 30-second ad. We watched it. We talked through it. We gave them the half penny for that. And good on them. And now let's do Israelis protest judicial overhaul in Tel Aviv. This one was sent to me by a regular on the show. we have to go over this, of course. And here is a Reuters, right? It was Reuters, right? Yep, Reuters. Oop, Jesus, how have we not subscribed to Reuters yet? All right, we're subscribing. We're going to keep this as a source because they do some decent stuff comparatively. And let's check out this clip. Probably about the halfway point of the show tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and smoke my very heavy, delicious bowl of, what the fuck are we hitting today? Sherbet Sundae. Sherbet Sundae with some soft wax on top, so it's going to smoke me hard. Let's sit back and enjoy these protests. Actually, looks like we're just going to enjoy some actual protests. We could do something kind of fun here. Something a little fun here. This is kind of cool that it's just going to be straight up protests that we can watch. I kind of wanted to do this for a while now. All right. What do we got here? What do we got here? Let's do here.
Before Jobber, it was late nights in the office.
Yeah, this guy. This is what I wanted right here.
Universal's Mardi Gras is back. The flavors are back. The parades and beads are back. And you can keep coming back and enjoy refreshing Coke Zero Sugar. It's Mardi Gras at Universal Orlando Resort.
Cops seem to be having a really good time.
it's me looking down on me. The world above must also be. This could go on for infinity. Color-coded just to keep me sane. My world is finally starting to take shape. I press the button and it bursts into life. This time nothing will escape my sight. I see the stars and the planets soon follow. Expect to have the universe by tomorrow. Just sit back and relax, don't worry. The world can wait. No need to hurry.
I thought that was fun. I guess it didn't get the response I was hoping for, but I thought that was a fun way to watch an actual segment of protesting with a cool ambient beat in the back and actually just watch some of a protest. So it is protest rallies, strikes, rallies, and riots, and maybe it wasn't as fun as I thought it would be, but that was a fun way to watch a protest, right? Alright, let's watch some Main Street media take on it.
Tonight, Israel's right-wing government under mounting pressure at home and abroad. Demonstrators back on the streets, the latest in a months-long wave of protests against government plans to weaken the Israeli Supreme Court. At the center of the storm, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who commands a majority in parliament but is facing strong resistance from across Israeli society. These grandmothers for democracy proving you're never too old to protest. I don't want what's happening in Russia to happen here, she says. We met great-grandmother and former Israeli Supreme Court Justice Dalia Dorner. Like her friend, the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Dorner is a legal pioneer for women's rights. Rights she fears may slip away if the government grants itself new powers to overrule the court.
We don't have a constitution to protect us, to protect the individual and to protect the minorities. And by the way, we are women, and we are a minority.
This is ultimately a fight about checks and balances. Netanyahu's opponents say a strong and independent Supreme Court is the only real check on the government's power. Netanyahu's supporters today mounting a small pro-government protest outside the court.
We demand for the government to proceed, to continue with the judicial reform and not to stop.
Far-right members of Netanyahu's government also pushing through a change to Israeli law, clearing the way for new settlements in the northern West Bank. Israel forced settlers out of the area in 2005 and promised the Bush administration they would not return. Now the Biden administration accusing Israel of going back on its word.
The legislative changes announced today are particularly provocative and counterproductive. The action also represents a clear contradiction of undertakings the Israeli government made to the United States.
The U.S. fears it will exacerbate violence heading into the Islamic holy month of Ramadan, with Palestinian militants already mounting attacks in the West Bank and Israel, and Israeli forces carrying out deadly raids in the heart of Palestinian cities. Netanyahu looking for middle ground between his supporters and a frustrated White House, saying he welcomes an end to a discriminatory and humiliating law that prohibited Jews from living in the areas of the northern West Bank, but adding the government has no intention of establishing new settlements in these areas. Netanyahu showing no sign of backing down on his judicial overhaul. But neither are the protesters, young and young at heart, taking to the streets against him. And if there wasn't enough going on, the Syrian regime is accusing Israel of bombing the airport in the city of Aleppo. Israel's military is refusing to comment, but we do know Israel has carried out a campaign of strikes against Iranian targets inside Syria.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
When it comes to paying bills, you...
I hit the click button, try to get rid of that, and that's how long it takes, because YouTube is paid for an algorithm by Main Street Media, and we all know it. We all see it on a day-to-day basis. If you watch as much independent news as I do, it gets frustrating. Like, they are so, like, I was trying to watch stuff today, and every single video I watched ended up going to freaking, what was it? Every single video ended up going to, I want to say NPR or Democracy Now! Or something like that. Every single clip. If I was watching Lee Camp, if I was watching Jimmy Dore, if I was watching Kim Iverson, it didn't matter. RBN, it always went to, I want to say Democracy Now! Every single time. I'm like, Democracy Now! Is not the answer to every single thing that I watch. That's not how the algorithm should work. So I get so frustrated with YouTube, and yeah. That's why I stream on Twitch mostly, because YouTube just sucks. Alright. Lawmakers spar as protesters interrupt hearing. Yes, I love it when people interrupt hearings. These are my heroes.
Mr. Moscow. See, this is exactly what we have to avoid, which is some minority of folks trying to silence dissent. Dissent shouldn't be kryptonite. We should have a civil conversation. We should have a spirited exchange of ideas. Mr. Raskin and I do, and I really respect it because he's good and he firmly believes what he believes. I believe a lot of the time differing, but there's a decorum that should be adhered to. So, Mr. Bosco, your brace is not a ghost gun, correct? Is this an insurrection? So will they be held to the same, I don't want another January 6th, do we?
If they're trying to overthrow the government, they ought to be held to the same standard, but I think they're trying to express different...
Whoa. Members out of line.
Point of order, the gentleman's time has expired.
Yeah, and here's a point of order. You weren't here to begin with. Ms. Jackson-Lee went 4.5 minutes over. We said that I was going to take 1 additional minute, and Mr. Biggs was going to take 1 additional minute. She went over by 4.5 minutes. Mr. Officers, can we have this woman removed, please?
We're in recess. She can speak all she wants. The hearing is not being conducted. We're in recess. We're in recess. She can speak as much as she wants. When you're gavel, that's a different story.
This proceeding is called to order. Just a quick note on what had transpired. There are House rules that govern proceedings. Unfortunately, we had some folks that were disruptive during the hearing. We asked Capitol Police to remove them. They were then removed. And then one decided to come back in while we were still gavelled in and disrupted the hearing. That's when we had a recess. Capitol Police were overwhelmed outside in the hallway, and now we're back in session. So I have 1 minute left, and this is what I want to talk about. Dissent is not kryptonite. It's the basis of this nation. I was on a city council, first elected office I had, 2009, and a woman came in. We used to give our citizens 5 minutes to speak, and she came in and told us how awful we were and enumerated the reasons as to why. And I thought that was wonderful. In fact, she ended up writing me a letter, and I put it in a frame, and I put it in my office, and my friends would come in and read it and say, why on earth would you put that in your office? And I said, because she can write that letter knowing, to a government official, knowing in this country that her house isn't going to be burnt down, that her car's not going to be confiscated, that she's not going to have...
I'm just going to vote against her interests for the next every year that I'm in power, and I'm going to make her life living hell by fucking over the poor and giving everything to the rich. But outside of that, I'm not going to actually do anything to her.
Have a fear or suffer violence because she simply spoke up to folks that are empowered and elected. And that's the majesty of our representative republic. And we should have a spirited exchange of ideas, which we have had in this committee, and I would imagine over the next hour or so we will continue to have. But to be that disruptive and to be that narcissistic, to breach decorum and disruption shouldn't be applauded. And it sure as hell shouldn't be applauded by members of this committee. That's why I was a little bit shocked that one member did that. So we are now, my time is now expired.
Would the gentleman yield for a moment?
I will not yield. We're just going to move on. Unless you go ahead if you have a quick question.
I just wanted to say this. There's a bill coming up that's based in part, it's a Republican-sponsored bill based on the Loudoun County School Board protests. And the Republicans, I guess, are arguing that that gentleman who was removed from that proceeding was mistreated, and that's part of the FBI weaponization strategy, I guess.
All right, sir. I have absolutely, literally no idea what you're talking about.
Oh,
so, all right. So
let me.
No, we're done. We're done. We're done. No. We're moving on. We're not going to get into this. We can have a discussion all day long. I'll see you on the floor. We can talk all day. Love that, and I think that you can learn from people that disagree with you, and so I have no problem with chat.
We'll
chat each other up.
When
Okay.
it's time.
There's some small dick energy right there for you.
The future of health is not a thing.
That was some massive small dick energy. Alright, envious dick person. I'm glad I'm done with you for a minute. Oh, man, the speaking is getting rougher and rougher, guys. Oh, I don't know if I'm going to freaking do a long one like that. But, alright, I think we have some, what's this called? France? Paris. Protesters in France. France? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different clips from France. Starting out with Australia, then The Sun, which I believe is Britain, then the AP Archive, which is America, Good Morning America, which is, I think, America, and then Reuters, which is based out of Russia, I believe. Yeah, anywho, 5 clips, all short, 2 minutes, 2 minutes, minute and a half, 2 minutes, minute. Oh, yeah, so, here we go. Here is the French protests, 5 different mainstream media sources, 4 different nations, all laid out into one thing. I mean, I don't think we want somebody like Putin exactly. He's ex-intelligence and currently a billionaire, so I'm not exactly in favor of ex-intelligence billionaires being in power, but I also hate everybody that's in power in DC pretty much, so I'm for shaking things up for sure. Alright, French protests.
Are revolting over the president's forced increase to the pension age, taking to the streets for a 9th day. The demonstrations started off peaceful before many descended into violence, sparking concern it will impact an upcoming visit by King Charles.
Bordeaux's City Hall burning. The entrance to the more than 200-year-old building going up in flames. France on fire after what started out as a peaceful day of mass demonstrations, descending into chaos on the streets. A violent face-off from riot police. As police stormed down the streets, some demonstrators lay curled on the ground, and this riot squad officer struck by a projectile, knocked out and dragged away. Fireworks were hurled, police pushing back with tear gas, which swallowed up the crowd.
Time after time, police sending off baton charges to try and force back the protesters.
In the country's west, behind a wall of umbrellas, projectiles were fired at police. From Rennes to Toulouse. For 9 days now, the French public has fought back with growing anger over their president's fiercely unpopular pension reforms. But as his country descended deeper into chaos, Emmanuel Macron stepped out in Belgium for an EU conference with a wink.
Well, these protests certainly aren't going to end any time soon. And stepping into the middle of all this chaos in the next few days will be King Charles in his first overseas visit as monarch.
It's not going to stop us, and if he comes, we're just waiting for him.
The royal visit has already been upended. A function at the Palace of Versailles forced to move due to threats of violence. France under siege by its own citizens. In Paris, Brett McLeod, 9 News.
France is under siege by his own citizens. Oh, fucking love the fucking different takes on shit. Alright. France take number 2. This time from the Sun, which I'm pretty sure that's right-wing Britain. So the Sun's just going to show Reuters footage? That is funny. That's kind of funny. The Sun's just going to show Reuters footage of their protests. That's actually kind of interesting. Oh, good job, Sun. Alright, let's move on to the next, I guess, if they're just going to show other people's shit. Alright, let's see how the AP covers our Paris police presence in Paris, protesters on streets. That's their title. You want somebody who goes sicko mode on the haters. Okay. I mean, like a Jesse Ventura, would that work for you? I don't know. I don't know what that exactly means, but I think we need a complete change, and the oligarchy that's running the planet is basically not working for any of us, in my opinion. But yeah, back to Paris. This is not a thing again, so I can, yeah, the Green Party fucked him over for sure. We were all kind of hoping that maybe they would turn tides and take him right. And I do have to say that, like, I've had some, Russians that hang out super late night here for us on the East Coast, but for them, morning streams, I'm sure. So I've had some of them come and hang out and say, that things haven't really changed with the new sanctions. They were already really heavily sanctioned. A few things about, you know, like Sprite changed to some weird thing, or like McDonald's closed down, so now they have to get like a Chinese company, you know. So I don't hate on Russians by any means. I don't really like governments per se in any sense of the
My name is Christine.
terms. I don't like governments. I don't like world leaders. But the Russian people are pretty solid, and yeah, I would like a real populace to take some form, based out of populism, not based out of co-opting populism, because that's what we get. We get a lot of co-opters of the populism, like Black Lives Matter. I mean, you know, all of these things, probably everything has been co-opted, right? So like they all get co-opted by the FBI, co-opted by the CIA, co-opted by corporations themselves, billionaires and stuff. So a true populism moment would be awesome. A general strike maybe first, and then out of a general strike we create a populist movement. That would be nice. Maybe an anti-war strike turns into a populist movement. All of these things are possible, and I am really, you know.
There was this little.
These are all things that I would be like to push for, and I think it has to be something organic. I think it has to come from a straight grassroots, like a true instantaneous grassroots cooperation, left and right, all these independents. I'm not talking about Democrats left and Republican right. I'm talking true left and true right. And if we built a movement out of like an anti-war strike or out of a general strike, I think that would be the only way that we could do it before they co-opted and got a corporate stooge like Bernie or a corporate stooge like Trump that, you know, look like a populist, but really they have the oligarchs' best interests at heart. I think that was a good spiel. All right, let's skip this fucking ad.
Across France over pension reform. More than 1 million people taking to the streets, some clashing with police, with numerous fires and incidents of looting reported. And breaking now, major news about a visit from King Charles. Marcus Moore is on the scene in Paris for us. Marcus, good morning to you.
Whit, good morning. We have just learned that King Charles, who was expected to arrive here in France for a visit in just a couple of days, is postponing his trip because of the unrest in this country. And Whit, I want you to see this. This is one of the many Paris streets that have been the scene of these massive and angry protests. This is trash that has been piled up here. Demonstrators setting it on fire. And in fact, in the distance, you may be able to see the smoke there. It's still smoldering. And there were new protests overnight in cities across the country. People clashing with police and also setting fires in a number of cities. We have heard from authorities that more than 450 demonstrators were arrested overnight nationwide, and that according to authorities, more than 400 officers were injured in the midst of these violent protests. Now, people here are angry. They are upset about President Emmanuel Macron's plan that will raise the minimum retirement age from 62 to 64. He says it is to protect the entire pension system, but people are so upset about the fact that he's implemented this plan and that also it was pushed through without a full vote in Parliament. So this is tension that has been building now for months. Workers and unions have been calling for protests and demonstrations every single day. And Lindsay, those demonstrations are expected to continue throughout the weekend.
You can see why King Charles decided not to come at this time. Marcus, thank you.
Well, hey there, GMA fans. Robin Roberts here. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel.
Always good when you have to wait a minute through video clips to get a 1.5-minute news stream that has a 30-second self-promotion at the end, huh? I will never be that channel that does 30% of the video as a self-promotion. Jeez, oh Pete. I think I have like when I clip these down on YouTube, I have like a 5-second like, Stoney Marxist, check us out on Twitch or something like that. Or live late nights or something, because I'm trying to push the YouTube people over here, because YouTube will fucking throttle me when I go over there. And I can slip a few videos through here and there, but usually they end up throttling me and demonetizing, muting, doing all sorts of good stuff to my clips. So yeah, I try to push the YouTube people over here, join the political push over here still, right? Like, well, try to save the politics in the Twitch universe. A lot of people think it's dying, so we're trying to save it here. We're trying to keep the political universe going. And violence hits Paris on days of pension protests. And this is the actual Reuters video, since the Sun used their clips. They got freaking fireworks, flash grenades, tear gas going off, and then you got a bunch of people videoing like, she's got a helmet on. The other person did not have a helmet. When I saw Luke of We Are Change go to the yellow vest protest, he had helmet, tear gas, like goggles, everything. And some of these people are just straight got nothing. A lot of them are smart. You know, French know how to protest. A lot of them got masks on. A lot of them got hats on. A lot of them got, you can see goggles. You can see a lot of eyeglasses and goggles. So you know, they're prepared. They're smart protesters over there.
And a DeKalb County judge is now...
Okay, the French protest gives me hope. Cop City gives me worry. Here is a few clips on Cop City. I gotta use the restroom. There's probably gonna be a commercial in between too. So let's get to the longer clip. Hold on.
Making his decision on what should happen to the so-called forced offenders arrested earlier this month. And we've obtained the court records for the people arrested for protesting the Atlanta Public Safety Training Facility. We've now learned 12 people have now been released on bond. 8 others have been denied bond because they pose a flight risk, and 2 more protesters did not go before the judge today. Now, the protesters were arrested earlier this month after warrants said they were trespassing, some throwing Molotov cocktails, fireworks, and rocks at police. And 11 Alive has obtained all court records, and we are continuing to comb through those cases from today. We will have an update online at 11alive.com.
We end today's show with an update on protests against...
All right, good. They didn't give us a commercial in between. Cop City judge denies bond to people rounded up in mass protests for opposing the cop facility. This is Democracy Now! She is Amy Goodman. I swear, if you don't know who that is, I apologize to yourself.
Cop City in Atlanta, and a dramatic hearing Thursday where a judge denied bond for many of the people jailed since March 5th when they were indiscriminately arrested at a music festival against the proposed police training facility, would be the largest in the country. It's in the Weelaunee Forest, and accused of vandalism and arson at a construction site a mile away. They're charged with domestic terrorism based on evidence like muddy clothes. One of those arrested was longtime New York City activist Priscilla Grimm, an editor of the occupied Wall Street Journal, whose daughter Sophia told The Independent, "We're so grateful and appreciative for all the support we have received. It's made things so much less stressful." For an update, we're joined by Micah Herskin, a local community organizer in Atlanta, Georgia. Welcome back to Democracy Now! Micah, talk about these charges of domestic terrorism and who is being held in jail and not released on bond.
Absolutely. So at the end of the day, these charges are political prosecution. So 23 people were arrested at the Weelaunee Forest Festival. This was at the very beginning of the week of action. As you said, there was an action that happened about a mile away from this site. And instead of showing up to that site, police showed up at this music festival where people were enjoying music, you know, having a good time, and mass arrested people. Now, ever since March 5th, there were 22 people being held in jail without bond. Just yesterday, they had new bond hearings where about 12 folks got out earlier because on consent bonds, which means they didn't have to pay. 8 people were denied bond yesterday, and 2 people were granted $25,000 bonds. The folks who were denied bond were, not denied bond for any specific evidence other than, as you said, having, mud on their clothes and their shoes, having wet pants. We've seen earlier affidavits and warrants that have said that folks are known members of a prison abolitionist movement. And so at the end of the day, these are really just about trying to repress this social movement that is trying to stop Cop City.
And this is a social movement that goes across the spectrum in Atlanta, right? I mean, you've got religious people, you've got environmentalists who are fighting this, you've got indigenous people who are fighting this, and you have people who are deeply concerned about issues of police brutality who are fighting this. And then you have the recent police killing of Tortuguita, who was one of the activists, and an independent autopsy just came out that suggested that Tortuguita was sitting cross-legged with their hands in the air when they were shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so the state has yet to release its autopsy still, even though, we're now months out from this killing. But this independent autopsy showed, Tortuguita's mother, speaking at a press conference, sat down and showed the position that this autopsy found that her child was killed in, which was essentially, looking like this, sitting cross-legged. There were bullets through their palms. And so, yeah, the more information that comes out, the clearer it is that, just as these prosecutions are political prosecutions, the killing of Tortuguita was a political assassination where police marched into the forest and killed somebody and then, most likely lied to cover it up.
The Independent's John Tarleton reported that the conditions in the DeKalb County Jail Women's Unit are poor, Sophia said, one of the daughters of those being held. Sparse food, overflowing toilets, no personal visits due to short staffing, paid telephone, video call services that barely function, transgender SDs being assigned to areas that don't correspond to their gender. The men's unit reported to be even worse, she said. Your thoughts on how people are able to communicate? And, we just did a story. We interviewed Ben Crump about the 10 people, 7 of them police officers, who were arrested on murder charges for killing a mentally challenged man at a hospital in Virginia. They're out on bond. These activists are charged with domestic terrorism and continue to be held.
Yes. They're being held, and again, really without evidence. During these bond hearings, it was clear that, the prosecution has not yet put together any case. They're, using these fallbacks. One of the examples that they gave was that people were wearing black, and that was evidence of playing on the team, of, being on the side of the protest. And so, the charges are all really shaky. There's really no legitimate evidence that's been put forward. In terms of the jail conditions, right now, this is true across the country, but especially in Atlanta, across the metro Atlanta area, our jails are in absolute crisis. There are jail deaths happening, across the metro area really frequently. The DeKalb County Jail, many parts don't have running water, is what we're hearing from inside. Toilets are broken. There are freezing temperatures. And, despite all of that, there have been vigils that organizers have been hosting outside of the jail as a way to communicate with folks inside. Shortly after their arrests, there was a large vigil that was planned, and things were projected on the jail, and folks were able to yell across the walls of the jail. A father of someone who had been arrested was able to speak directly to his child. And so there have also been really beautiful moments of solidarity and folks on the outside making sure that, we're supporting folks inside.
Micah Herskin, I want to thank you for being with us, local community organizer in Atlanta, Georgia. I want to thank you so much for being with us. That does it for our show. On Monday, Democracy Now's Juan Gonzalez is moderating an online panel on Chicago's 2023 mayoral race, Reclaiming Harold Washington's Multiracial Coalition. Details at Democracy.
Hey, Tampa Bay.
One more clip about Cop City, because we're going to keep harping on this subject until we have to stop, right? I mean, we're not going to stop harping on this Cop City story. I'm not going to stop bringing it up, and I'm not going to shut up about it for sure.
international issue, and the world is looking to us for a response to this violation of human and environmental rights. Ho, ho! APF has got to go! Ho, ho! Ho, ho! APF has got to go! Ho, ho! Ho, ho!
We do not encourage them to come in, destroy what we're trying to do and what our message we're trying to get across.
On one hand, you have this vision of the world, which is increased militarization, increased repression, and then what we see tonight is this other vision, which is people coming together from different walks of life and protecting what sustains us.
Tonight, you saw unification, you saw security without police, you saw accountability. They see people coming from out of town, out of support, but what they don't see are the other actions that are going on in New York, the other actions that's going on in Alabama, in the Bay Area, across this nation to stop this cop city because they know that it's going to affect everyone else and their respective cities that they're coming from.